Let's see. Speaking of the legend.
How are you doing? It takes a legend to know a legend.
Good morning.
Good morning or good evening.
Yeah, I was just saying that I can only join 15 to 20 minutes.
Okay.
Zibnik is not making it. I don't know if it's because of the delivery.
Oh, did he have his baby? Do you know? Or you're saying you don't know if that's why?
Not yet. I don't know if that's the reason, but
All right, let me share the agenda then, and we'll just jump right into it. Thanks everyone for joining. We are recording this. I'll post it to YouTube after the fact. This is now February 2nd. Proposed agenda. Great. It's already here. Maybe we'll start. We don't have too many folks here. Let me make sure I have my attendee list visible. Tom, if you just want to go first and kind of quickly introduce yourself. And I assume you already have everything you want to talk about on the agenda, but if there's anything else, you can pop it in there too.
Yes, so my name is Tom Kerkhoven. I'm an architect at KEDA in Europe. That's it.
Great. Shubham, I'll go ahead and let you go next and just copy your stuff from last time too.
Oh, hi, I'm Shubham. I'm from NEC. I'm working as an open source developer. That is from my side.
Great. Perfect. Jonathan, do you want to do a quick intro?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Jonathan from a startup called Goliath. We do IoT infrastructure.
Great. And anything you want to cover, or just here to join in?
Just joining in today. Perfect.
Sounds good. Aaron, did I copy and paste your name but not actually have you introduce yourself? I'll let Aaron go. I think I did skip him, and then Ahmed, if he wants to, and we'll just jump into it from there.
Oh, you're good. Aaron Schlesinger, cloud advocate at Microsoft.
Great. And then Ahmed.
Hi, Ahmed, software developer at Microsoft.
Sweet. And then I'm Jeff. I don't have anything for the agenda. Like just a few updates. I'm remembering now. I still didn't finish that governance scalar stuff, but we did a few other random updates. Onrud and myself have been working with a customer who's working to onload KEDA and Azure functions. They were having some issues with the Event Hub trigger, specifically around scaling down. So Suyoshi from our team is looking into it. You might have seen Sonia, who's one of our PMs, posted on the Slack channel asking to chat with folks who are interested in using KEDA. She's going to be doing some more customer outreach. And then I spent a bunch of time yesterday working with Brendan Burns, who was playing with KEDA and Azure functions, and had a few questions. But everything worked well. We had a bug in our core tools, but it was a minor bug. In general, he said, he's like, this is a very compelling story here. So it's good to have him. I think he's going to be using it for some presentations he has coming up. So he just needed some help answering a few questions. But in general, KEDA worked flawlessly for him, from what I can tell. So, okay. So with that, we'll switch to our regularly scheduled programming. Tom, you've got the first one, KEDA 2.0, which was great. I assume, did Zibnik help do this one? And we just got it out the door and we're all great now?
Yes. I was trigger happy on one aspect, so we had to first pull it back, but then we fixed that. And now it is available. The Helm chart is available. I think the operator is also available. So you can now use it. There's also a pull request open for those using Azure functions. So that is coming soon, which is also in the notes.
And is this just you've got that here. I see. Yeah, I wonder if we can, because like in theory, do we have to update this whenever we do a release? Like the core tools team needs to update something.
In this case, we did, because we introduced the new CRD, which is the cluster trigger authentication.
Yes, I see. So like the YAML actually changed, but in the future, it might not be needed.
Yeah.
Great. That makes sense. Thank you. Great. Hopefully that I'll pull this up. I have to open my browser that has my Microsoft sign in because some single sign-on rule or something. But
you
I'll
can
ping
call
this.
it bullshit. It's okay.
But this looks pretty straightforward, and I would imagine this could be reviewed much faster than the last set of changes. So thanks,
I
Tom.
think they're just waiting for Ahmed to sign off.
I see.
Yeah, we'll take a look at it today.
But it's not that urgent actually. So
Great. Okay, ARM support. Interesting, Tom. I'm curious, and I know you're running short on time, but it looks like you have some updates here because there was a question on like, hey, could we have an ARM build? And we're like, oh, we don't know.
yeah,
We don't know what that would
So,
look like.
So I checked with the CNCF. They do provide bare metal ARM machines.
Wow.
We have to request one, so I'm tracking it here. But the request form is quite the size, so I didn't find the correction time yet.
It's more than just saying we want one. We have to fill out a bunch of stuff.
So if you go to the link over there on the right, it shows how we can request one. Yeah, if you open an issue, apparently you need to fill in everything and then.
Do you know where we get? Okay, so they give us like I'm curious even where these machines spin up on.
Yeah, it's Equity or something.
Yeah, this thing. Yeah, this provider, whatever.
Yeah, and then we have to write a blog post over time, how we like it. It's basically
interesting. Okay.
And then we could use a GitHub self-hosted runner on top of that, and we add that to our organization, and then we can run GitHub actions on that machine.
Interesting. Okay.
We'll get there.
Is this? I assume this isn't the top of your to-do list. This is some. I'm like curious on enough of this, and especially that like I've never done the GitHub action stuff. That maybe I'll just ping you if I end up poking into this or trying to fill out this form. I'll just let you know, Tom, before you spend time.
Yeah, that's fine.
But I'm this one piques my curiosity. It sounds.
I don't think ARM and Edge is used or requested a lot now, but I certainly see a high demand coming this year, next year. So,
yep, I agree.
We'll need it. And then we're onboarding a new GitHub preview, which basically gives us rendered issues.
I saw that floating around Twitter yesterday. Yeah, where you fill out like an actual form rather than like this, where we just put in a template with headings and hope that people do it.
So I've been asking for a year for this. It's finally coming. They even have drop downs and all of that. So the bug reports and feature requests will now be cleaner.
Great. When does that roll out? Do we know?
They feature flagged us in, but it doesn't really work at the moment. So
so probably in the next 2 or so weeks.
Yeah.
Great.
But that will help. And then a request by Zivnek is we have a lot of issues open in terms of our end-to-end test stability. So if somebody in the community wants to jump in and help us with those, that would be really great.
That's good. Yeah, I'm curious even if there's some way we could build some momentum around folks jumping in and building a few of these, like a little hackathon or bug bashy type thing. Okay, great. That's awesome. All very good updates.
That's what's
Tom.
on the list.
Awesome. And I know you're short on time, but these are all actually super helpful updates. I'm excited about all of these things. Before we kind of go around the room, and I know I've got a question on the status of the HTTP stuff, Aaron, because I've seen some traction there and was sharing that out with a few folks, even myself this week. But yeah, any questions or comments or thoughts from anyone else on the call on any of those updates we kind of ran through around KEDA 2.1, ARM support, issue form, or end-to-end tests? Okay. Great. Yeah, maybe we'll do a quick conversation then about Aaron. Do you want to just kind of give the latest on what the HTTP scaler stuff is doing? Like I mentioned, I saw some activity in the repo. I think you mentioned yesterday when I was chatting with you that the alpha is probably pretty close. So I assume that means people maybe shouldn't go try to build this stuff just yet. I don't know. Any thoughts on that or what folks should expect?
Sure. Sorry, light is, maybe that'll help. Yeah, so we've got pretty much there's pretty much alpha functionality now, but I gotta add some more docs and some testing because we have like negative 10% test coverage or something like that. So yeah, so the docs, Tom, you added issues for adding a design doc and an architecture diagram, which I'm working on right now. There's a few other kind of logistical things before I would recommend people check this out. Probably the biggest one is that we don't have a place to put the images on Docker Hub right now. So I'm just like putting them in my personal Docker Hub. And
I would, maybe that's a bigger discussion, but can you push them to the GitHub container registry for now, please?
Sure. Yeah.
Because I've used, I migrated my personal projects to them, and they give you a lot more insights. They give you a pull per tag, for example, which Docker Hub does not give you.
Okay.
So it might be a good test for KEDA to see if we migrate everything or not.
Okay.
I'll show the link with an example for those interested.
That'll be that'll make my CI/CD setup life a little easier because I don't have to set up the external stuff. Okay, yeah. So I think after I do that and some docs, the ones that I mentioned, it's probably alpha. It'll be in a good alpha state where people can go try it. You can of course go try it now, but docs are a little bit shaky.
Sure.
So if you can figure out what to do despite the docs, things work pretty well. We've gotten to the point where like I found some cases where scaling doesn't happen fast enough. We're at the point where we're starting to look at how do we make scale from 0 faster. A couple other little odds and ends. So I've got to go and like fill out the issue queue better and add some better descriptions and so forth. But yes, as far as the alpha goes, after I do docs and the GitHub package registry thing, alpha should be good to go. And I can talk with you all about when is a good time and if I should write something up or whatever. But yeah, I think we're in good shape to be at least ready to do it this week.
That's great. That's a good update. And I thought too, like this is more of an aside. I thought there was, at some point I remember going to this repo and there was like a diagram of what was happening per the earlier comment around like a reference diagram, but maybe I'm misremembering or maybe it was on an email or something.
Oh yeah. There's one in a closed pull request in there. That's a little bit out of date.
Sure.
So I'm going to go and update that and put it, probably link to it from the README.
Makes sense. That's cool. Yeah, that's great. And if you have any issues with like permissions and even to like, it sounds like GitHub Container Registry might be the preferred destination moving forward, which makes sense. If you have any issues getting access to like publish a container registry under the KEDA org, let me know. I think you should have them. But similarly, like we do have the KEDA org on Docker that if you needed permissions to push to that organization too. But I tend to agree. I could even foresee a world where in the future we move all the KEDA images over to GitHub, but I don't quite know exactly what restrictions exist in Docker Hub anymore. I just know there was a bunch of stuff happening in that space and I was confused by it.
It is still in preview. That's the only thing.
Oh, the GitHub Container Registry is?
Yeah. But yeah, for example, the sample with .NET is also using it so that it brings the images closer to the code base.
Sure.
That's
yeah.
Great.
I wish there were I was just like, there's some aspects of the HTTP add-on that will definitely be kind of like unique to how it works with KEDA and how it publishes metrics, but other things like how we can speed up scaling from 0 to 1. I know Knative does a bunch of optimizations, but I don't think the tech is really in a spot that we could like pull out pieces of the scale from 0 to 1 thing and integrate it with this thing The only other project I know of that does 0 to 1 is OpenFaz, and I think it's a similar story. And I don't know how many optimizations they've done. So maybe this will become it's just such a universal problem, the 0 to 1 for HTTP without having bad cold start. I'm in some ways surprised that there's not some existing IP to integrate with all this other stuff just to make that problem a little less pronounced.
Yeah, OpenFaz uses Prometheus.
One thing I've seen, I think Knative does this, is they just keep a tiny little pod with like half of a CPU slice around. So it's, scale from quote unquote 0, but it's not, it's not 0. So the first X requests actually get serviced by the hidden pod while the real pods are spinning up.
Oh, interesting. And it's like half a core, because we do something similar in the Azure Function Service where we have what are called placeholder containers that are like running a generic image, running our runtime, running like the Node process or the Java process or whatever else. And then when we specialize them, when we get them ready, we like stick the user's code into it really fast. But all the other things are already done ahead of time. But it sounds like Knative, it's not getting like it's not a shell that they have at half a core. It's like they actually have your service at half a core, and then they create a bigger one that can actually handle more traffic. And that way they can handle a few requests on that half core. But you'd almost have a half core per service that you've got running. Is that how you understand it too, Aaron?
Yeah, they have kind of 2 tiers actually. They've got that, and then they've got what they call an activator, which is basically approximately the same thing as the interceptor in this architecture. So the interceptor holds the request till it can find one of those tiny little pods. When it forwards to the tiny little pod, it also concurrently pushes to their version of KEDA, so their scaler, to immediately spin up. Yep, KPA. So to spin up more pods at whatever scale that they anticipate they need. But
oh, keep going. Sorry.
The last thing, the last I checked, there was an issue, I think, for doing something heuristically, like doing predictions or something like that. So by no means am I suggesting let's go start doing predictive scaling and so on. Really what I'm thinking is there a way to do this like little slice of a CPU thing without making someone, if someone has 5 services in their cluster, without telling them, hey, you're scaling to 0, but under the hood, like using a bunch of their resources in their cluster without them knowing.
Yeah. And I like this whole stuff. Like the only other thing I'm thinking of is like, obviously we'll get the alpha out the door and make some noise around that. But like this entire space and the type of tech and the problems even that you're talking about, Aaron, like I'm really interested to see how we can socialize this around the community and like maybe try to get a little bit of momentum around some of these things. The only other thing I'll flag, and I think I mentioned this in calls before, there's a few folks in Microsoft research that I'm happy to connect you with as well. You might be able to motivate them too. They took a bunch of historic usage data for functions, like Azure Functions. It's now all on GitHub. It's anonymized and it's scrambled. So it's not like you'll see any of personal data in there. But they trained a predictive model for our service that we now use that tries to like actually predict. And the success rates are actually better than I expect. That said, they reached out to me like last year sometime, and they're like, hey, do you have any other thoughts of what we could do? And I was like, yeah, you should do that same thing for KEDA and like get that working in KEDA. And they're like, okay, we're going to look at it. And I don't know if they ever did, but like, I am curious what it would take for them to take a similar model like that. And I don't know how personalized it is to the Azure Function Service and how much it's just a generic put data in here, get prediction out there thing. But yeah, this is a really interesting space to me. And yeah, to the earlier comment, I don't really see like a universal consensus or even like everyone rallying around a specific project or piece of tech to help try to make traction on it. And I wonder if this can help drive that conversation forward. I'm not saying it has to be this specific project and this specific implementation, but KEDA's kind of a little bit in a safer vendor neutral space than other products. So maybe there's something there. I don't know.
Yeah, I think we'll probably, it seems to me like it's a very important problem, but I don't know, like, do you have any sense for how many people in the open source CNCF world actually hit this problem? Like not those that are running on Azure infrastructure, but those who pick up KEDA or whatever else and run on their own clusters.
Yeah, it's hard because so far KEDA is all async, non-HTTP, and so people don't have to worry about it. This will be the first one where, yeah, to that I am curious, and maybe like I would imagine, and well, not even imagine, like the general consensus is, well, you just keep one replica around. Like, why would you scale to 0? But to your other question, I don't know how high the appetite is for like how many people want to be able to scale their service all the way down to 0. I mean, we see KEDA, people want to do that all the time for non-HTTP. So it leads me to believe that people would want it. I just think the trade-off of like, yeah, you get it, but it also means that you're going to have, 7 seconds of latency on that first request. And people are like, that's not worth it. I'll just keep one around.
Yeah. I guess if you own the whole cluster already, maybe not a bad idea. Just keep one
exactly.
around.
It's like, I probably have the cores anyway. Like I'm not that tight. Yeah, I agree. Interesting. This is very cool, though. I'm excited to see. I might wait for the alpha docs, but even looking at this, I'm like, oh, I think there's enough here. Maybe I could get this working, but I'll keep an eye on this. And then as soon as it's an alpha, I'll go and give this a spin as well. So thanks, Aaron. This is really good.
Yeah.
All right. Tom had to leave. He had to drop to something. Zibianex able to join today. We covered everything in the agenda. Anything else anyone wants to flag? Questions, comments?
I have a quick question on
Go for it, Jonathan.
HTTP add-on. In the concept of the interceptor, there's a discussion between, I think it was me and Tom around looking at the services API v2, the Ingress v2, and if you squint at the interceptor, it seems like potentially an implementation of services v2 could be the interceptor. Is that a good way to think about it?
Yeah, I think it is. I read I think you put the link to that on an issue. Yeah, wherever that was, that's when I kind of skimmed it, and then I came back and read it a little better, but admittedly I haven't read the whole thing, like that entire doc. So I think from what I read, yeah, it seems like the interceptor is an implementation of it.
Yep.
And then I'll just add on to that. We also wanted to do, I think there's some overlap too. The KEDA core also wants to do an SMI scaler. So I don't know what the future, if any, of the interceptor really is. Maybe the external scaler in the HTTP add-on just talks to SMI or just talks to some other Ingress v2 or services v2 API. Honestly, the interceptor is just kind of a quick and dirty thing that is meant to be swapped out in the future if someone wants to. So I'm going to leave it up in the air for now and just say the interceptor is fairly performant. It works okay. And implements like the worst non-standard API. It's like a single endpoint that returns a queue size. But that all being said, like it's intended to be explored, to swap out, possibly swap out later or improve or whatever needs to happen.
Yeah, and my naive understanding, may have read the docs a few more times than you, is that the services v2 is really a gateway API. And you think of it as a standardized interface for any multiple types of ingress controller type things. It doesn't define any implementation detail. So for like north-south traffic, you might use a gateway ingress, so many different terms. And you swap, you put in your own implementation for a particular protocol or your own implementation of a protocol. And then the role of SMI, and this is kind of how I was proposing, was east-west traffic, right? Okay. And so you can imagine the interceptor being the implementation of the Services v2 for Ingress, and as well as SMI interface. So someone has to implement that for HTTP, and it could just be this evolves into by exposing those common interfaces for Ingress and SMI.
Okay, I see. So you're saying Interceptor could potentially be an implementation of Services v2. We then could build support to consume Services v2 APIs to get the scaling metrics.
Yep, yep.
Okay,
And
I'm gonna put an issue
operational-
in for that.
Yeah, just like the operational integration of Services v2 in Kubernetes itself.
Okay. Actually, do you mind putting an issue in? Sounds like you have a much better grasp on this stuff.
Yeah, I will say I have a grasp of the stuff. I don't know how good it is.
Yeah, well, better than me, at least. You've read the documentation more than
Yeah, that's fair.
more than cursorily.
The land of the blind.
Yeah, sounds good. I'm fine with that.
Cool. All right. Yeah, happy to.
I appreciate it.
Great. Perfect. Yeah, thanks. I'm glad you dropped in that, Jonathan. And sorry, my camera froze up too, so I just turned it off so you don't have to look at me staring blankly into space. But that said, yeah, any other comments, thoughts from anyone before we wrap up? Sweet. Thanks everyone for the help. Nice for everyone. I guess I don't know if anyone's still on the call helped with the 2.1 release, but that's good to see that went out the door. Excited to see some of the stuff around HTTP add-on drop. And then we'll meet again in 2 weeks with potentially some more updates. So I'll go ahead and publish this recording to YouTube, and I'll be on Slack if anyone needs me in the meantime. Thanks so much, everyone.
Take care.
See ya.